Hello, BookTube. It's that time of the month or whatever it is where I go through all the books I read in the previous month. This video is going to be me talking about all the books I read in September. September of my years, for those who know. And I read a lot of interesting things today. There was some rereads. There were some wild picks. I did join in on Shake Timber, the iconic Billy Shakes reading event too, and that was really fun. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's start with what I read at the start of September. First things I read were a two-volume history on former Prime Minister Gough Whitlam. This is by Jenny Hocking. It's a really solid biography. I did find that it was a bit too distracted. Like, I feel like Jenny was really capturing the history of the Labour Party at the time during the late to early 70s, mid to early 70s. I don't know why I said late, but and like the context around Whitlam's dismissal and his rise through the Labour Party and through the unions. But I feel like I didn't get much of the Whitlam himself, and I feel like I don't know. I really did enjoy it at the end of the day, but I did have to nitpick that. But if you ever see Gough Whitlam his time at an op shop or whatever, pick it up because it was a lovely reading and it is a really good place to start with Mr. Whitlam. And it's not the only time you're not going to be hearing him on this list because I read a lot of Gough Whitlam this month. So I read those two books by Jenny Hocking, and then for Shake Timber, I got confused there. I didn't want to commit to a play because I'm going to be reading all the plays next year with Joshua Kribo, of course. So I thought I would save the plays for next year. And I didn't feel like committing to a sonnet. I know they're shorter, but I just wasn't in the sonnet mood, really. And so I decided to read two of his longer poems. I read, reread. I read these, according to Goodreads, I've read these 3 times. And that's crazy because I can't remember them that much. I read the Rape of Lucretius and Venus and Adonis. Now I love these. I think it's interesting to see because these came out early in Billy's career, and it's interesting to see even back then. You could see this man was destined for great things. I think they're extremely well written. I'm. It's very lovely. They're about myths and retellings, like and all that stuff. It would have been interesting to see back then and comparing these early works to like a Sydney or a Spencer and thinking, wow, who's this like newcomer on the scene? But little did they know. But anyway, very good. Billy Shakes is always great. I am excited to read the plays next year. What was I going to say? And I'm tempted to maybe reread them next year, some of the longer poems and sonnets, because if I'm committing to all the plays, I may as well. And I do like the play is obviously that's what I'm saying. I do like the longer poems. I would honestly take the Venus and Adonis and the Rape of Lucretius over my least favorite Shakespeare plays, which for me I've never ever liked the Merry Wives of Windsor. I've never enjoyed the Taming of the Shrew or the Two Gentlemen of Verona. I can defend Titus and Andronicus. I can defend Henry VI. I think they're fine, but those just 3 plays have never done anything for me at all, and I need to process that next year when I read them. And I feel like maybe they won't be as good. Ooh. Anyway, so I read that for Shake Timber. And then going back onto the Gough Whitlam train, I read John Kerr, who was the Governor General who dismissed Whitlam's government in 75. He'd done a book after, like a couple of years after the dismissal, and it was pretty much him talking about what happened, like his point of view on why he decided to fire the Whitlam government. And it was very interesting. And I was reading it, and I was like, I'm still a Gough Whitlam girly at the end of the day, but I don't know. I just personally, I just agree with Gough. I think, and so I read that, and I was like, okay, I need the other perspective. So, because like a year or two after John Kerr, who was the Governor General again, released that book, um, former Prime Minister Gough Whitlam released a response book called The Truth of the Matter. And it was so cunty. I loved it so much. It was so direct, and it just blew John Kerr's book out of the water, if I'm being honest. Whitlam came prepared, he took notes, he was ready to counterpoint all of John Kerr's claims that he made in his book about the Whitlam government. And it was just amazing, if I'm being honest. It's one of my favorite political books in Australian history. It's so great. I got the new edition because I do have like a hardcover of it or whatever. But I did buy like a newer print because they got reprinted last year, and it has a lovely introduction by current Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, and that was really lovely too to hear his thoughts on what happened, but also his thoughts on the book itself because it's nice to hear that, and so I did love that too. So I read those two more books on Gough Whitlam. And then I done some rereading. I read The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. Now I read this as a teen. It was assigned to me in high school and I thought it was good, but I didn't really think much of it. I reread it over the last couple of weeks and was gagged by how much I loved it. It's one of my favorite war books ever, if I'm being honest. I think it's just so beautifully done. It's pretty much vignettes, like short story collection type stuff, but just the way it all represents and displays what soldiers went through in the Vietnam War is so powerful. The characters are so memorable, and I love them to death. And it's just amazing. I get why it's assigned in schools. It's so like poignant, and it's just I can see why it's become a modern classic because it's up there for me. I loved it so much. I do have two more Tim O'Brien books on the way because I was like, I need more of him in my life. So I did get one more. I can't remember the exact name of it. It's like one of his more famous one. It's another Vietnam War one. And then I also brought his memoir about his time in the Vietnam War, If I Die in a Combat Zone. And when they come, I will happily read them because I want more Tim O'Brien. And I was just shocked by how much I really loved The Things They Carried. It's honestly one of my favorite books of the last 30 years. It's just incredible. Then I done more rereading. I read True History of the Kelly Gang by Peter Carey. Now, I love Peter Carey. I love Oscar and Lucinda's, one of my favorite books ever. I love Idle Whackers too. That was really great. And this is Peter doing a reimagining of Ned Kelly's life. Ned Kelly was a bushranger, pretty much like a Australian Jack the Ripper, but more like in the bushland, pretty much. That's like that type of like mythological like murderer, pretty much. And it's like a reimagining of his life. This won the Booker like when it came out like 20 something years ago, and I've never really clicked with it. I didn't click with it on a reread. I do think it's objectively really well written, but it's just I don't know why. I feel like I'm missing out on something because it's such a famous book and it's just never done anything for me. I don't know if it's because it's Ned himself and I would rather just do like a non-fiction book about Ned rather than a reimagining of Edward's life because there is an insane amount of retellings of Edward's life. And there's and I feel like it's just never been my vibe. I'd rather read a non-fiction book and I don't know how well it translates to fiction, if I'm being a bit honest. I did think it was really well written. It just wasn't for me. So I read that. And then I randomly read two Tessa Bailey books. Now, I'm always on the fence with Tessa Bailey. Sometimes she writes some of the worst things I've ever read. And then sometimes she writes romances that are so unhinged and I love him so much. Like I'm talking about Fangirl Down. I loved Fangirl Down. Compare that to like the slop that was My Killer Vacation, and I read because she had a new book coming out in September called Picture Perfect. It was a sports romance, and I had to catch up. So I read Dream Girl Drama, and it's like a future step sibling romance, except they're like adults, so it's a bit weird. It done something to me. I didn't find it hot, but I really had fun with it. I love how self-aware Tessa Bailey is when it comes to the book she writes. She goes over the top, and I honestly really respect her for that. And I also read Picture Perfect too, so I done those two back to back, and I'm hooked on Tessa Bailey. I'm not a fully committed Tessa Bailey girly yet, but you know, between Picture Perfect, Dreamgirl Drama, Fangirl Down, a lot of her main two, Hook, Line, Sinker, and It Happened One Summer, whatever that one was. I really like Tessa Bailey, and I don't know. I feel like I need to not. I feel like I need to be more careful when I pick a Tessa Bailey out because sometimes it's so hit and miss. But just reaffirmed that maybe I am a Tessa Bailey girly, and I feel like she's more committed to the bit, unlike an Ali Hazelwood. Like she's not as stiff as Ali when it comes to her writing. But anyway, I need to process that more before I keep on going about Tessa Bailey. And then I done another reread, and this is the gag of them all. I reread The Catcher in the Rye. Now, again, I read this in high school. I'm one of those people. I was never taught Shakespeare in high school, but my God, did I read The Catcher in the Rye? And I just thought it was fine as a 15-year-old. I was like, whatever. I reread it as like literally last week. I can't even tell you how much I weirdly loved it. I think it is one of the most unique books ever written. Like there will never be another book like The Catcher in the Rye, or even before it. Like when at the start where Holden talks about this isn't David Copperfield, I literally got up and clapped. I was like, this is I need it. And I feel like I never understood why people think Holden is such a whiner. Like this kid has literally gone through so much. He's in what? A, he's he's on death's door pretty much. And he's just going through so much trauma. I wouldn't be surprised if he was honestly a bit schizophrenic. But I really enjoyed Catcher in the Rye. I know that's a really red flag, but I just found it so gripping, and I'm shocked by just how original it really is. And you can say that it hasn't aged as well, like in terms of the vulgarness of the language and stuff like that. And I do get that, but I think the core of what The Catcher in the Rye is about, I think, is incredibly original. And I feel like Salinger really caught lightning in a bottle with that story. I am tempted to read now. I really want to read more Salinger. I want to do 9 stories next, so I'm on the hunt for a copy of that and see what else I can find of him because I really need to read more Salinger. It was a really nice surprise actually because I don't know, it was a book I haven't thought about in a while, and just I don't know, I just really was amazed by it, and I can't wait to reread it. I know that's a bit shocking, but to change perspectives a bit, and my last thing I read for September, I reread The Wonky Donkey by Craig Smith. Now, if you do not know the picture book The Wonky Donkey, please find it and give it a read. It's like literally what, 6 pages. It is such a funny, knee slapping, hand clapping, fun picture book. I've always loved it. I didn't grow up with it. I read it as a teen and I was like, this is so fun. And I know there are sequels, and I'm like, give me more. I need more Wonky Donkey in my life. And I feel like it's just such a lovely read and a lovely reread. And again, if you haven't read The Wonky Donkey, please do. So that's my homework for you. Go read The Wonky Donkey. And so, yeah, that's all the books I read in September. Let me know what you thought about the books I read or my thoughts on the books. Let me know in the comments. And yeah, thank you so much for watching BookTube, and I will see you next time.